My name is Camilla Drannan, and I am 32 years old. If there is one thing I've learned about my family, it's that we will smile through anything, uncomfortable jokes, unspoken resentment, even the slow decay of relationships we pretend are still intact. But this last Christmas was the first time the mask cracked, and Alyssa was the one who struck it. Christmas at my parents' house has always been messy in a familiar, predictable way. Forced small talk, overcooked ham, gifts that don't quite land. But this year, there was a certain heaviness in the air from the moment I walked through the door. Alyssa arrived late, as expected, but she made sure everyone noticed her. She swept into the living room, wearing a loud faux fur coat she clearly thought screamed luxury, even though I'd seen the same coat and the same supposedly authentic Gucci bag on Facebook Marketplace the week before. She kissed everyone on the cheek, acting like she'd flown in from a glamorous European life instead of crashing on her ex couch in Glendale. Everything about her entrance announced, "I need attention," and we all braced for whatever she had planned. She kept glancing at me as we circled around the tree, waiting for her moment. Alyssa thrives on spectacle. I've spent years playing the designated villain in her dramas because fighting back only made things worse. But something about the way she clutched that gold-wrapped box told me she was hunting for a bigger reaction this year. Finally, she handed it to me with a grin so wide it looked rehearsed. "I got you something you really need this year," she said loudly, making sure the entire room tuned in. I opened it slowly, not because I was excited, because I was bracing myself. Inside was a book with bright yellow letters, "How to Be Less Cheap." A beat of silence. Then the room erupted. Laughter from my cousins, a snort from Uncle Steve, my dad actually slapping the arm of the couch like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. I smiled, not genuinely, but out of habit, the same survival tactic I've used since childhood. If I laugh, it won't sting as much. If I downplay it, maybe she won't escalate. But Alyssa wasn't done. She leaned forward, eyes shining. "Don't forget the envelope." I opened it. A tri-folded document slid out. At first glance, it looked like a check. Then I realized what it really was. A loan application. Her name already filled out, her information submitted, and a pink sticky note pointing to the line labeled "Co-signer." She'd wrapped her financial mess and handed it to me like a Christmas gift. I looked at the paper, then at her. She smiled like this was a bonding moment. Without saying a word, I tore the application in half, slowly, cleanly, and let the pieces fall onto her lap like discarded wrapping paper. The room went silent. My mom froze mid-pour with the cider bottle. One cousin stopped chewing mid-bite. My dad stood up, staring at me like I'd ruined the holiday. "Jesus, Camilla," he muttered, as if I had crossed some sacred line instead of refusing financial fraud. Alyssa's face twisted, caught between fury and confusion, like she couldn't decide if she should play the victim or the aggressor. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine, and felt my hands steady in a way they hadn't in years. She followed me, her voice low and venomous. "You're being dramatic. Selfish. I needed that loan, and you know damn well I would have paid you back. You don't have kids. You don't have responsibilities. You could have actually been useful for once." Before I could respond, another voice cut through the tension. My mom stepped from behind the fridge door, her expression tight. "Camilla doesn't owe you a cent, and maybe next year you should focus on getting your life together instead of humiliating your sister." Alyssa blinked, stunned. For the first time in years, she didn't have a comeback ready. She left quietly, no dramatic exit, no slamming doors, just keys, coat, and silence. We all pretended the night wasn't ruined. We ate pie and opened gifts while the room felt thick with smoke from a fire no one wanted to acknowledge. My dad tried to explain it away. "She's emotional. She's under pressure. She didn't mean any of it." But I knew better. Alyssa had always pushed boundaries, assuming I'd bend like I always had. But this time, I didn't. And something in the air shifted because of it. 2 days after Christmas, a text from Dad popped up on my phone. "Alyssa says you humiliated her. Just apologize and make peace." Not a single "Are you okay?" Not "What happened?" Just instructions to fix what Alyssa broke. I stared at the screen, then typed back. She gave me a loan application wrapped as a gift. No response. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. 4 days later, the calls started. Banks asking if I was aware I'd been listed as a reference on loan applications. One even asked for income verification. Alyssa had used my information without asking, without warning, without caring. She hadn't learned a lesson that night. She'd simply sharpened her knives. That's when the shift truly began. That's when I knew the story wasn't just a Christmas humiliation. It was the opening act of something much bigger. The first sign that Alyssa wasn't done came not from her, but from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, expecting a spam call, only to hear a clipped professional voice asking, "Is this Camila Drennan? We're calling to confirm you're aware you've been listed as a reference for a loan application." My stomach dropped. Not just because she'd used my name, but because she hadn't even bothered to hide it. 4 different banks called within the next few days. 4. Alyssa had scattered my information around like confetti, hoping one institution would approve her. That wasn't desperation. That was entitlement disguised as helplessness. I immediately filed a fraud alert and froze my credit. It took less than 10 minutes, but my hands shook the entire time, not from fear, anger, a thick, boiling anger I had spent most of my adult life swallowing down. I texted her once, only once, "Don't ever use my name again." She didn't reply. No apology, no denial, no panicked explanation. Instead, she went public. 3 days later, she posted a carefully cropped picture of herself and my dad on Instagram, making it look like they were enjoying some perfect post-holiday father-daughter moment. The caption read, "Some people forget the meaning of family. Glad I still have mine." The comments poured in exactly the way she wanted. "Stay strong. Haters going to hate. You're the resilient one." Old roommates, acquaintances I barely remembered, even distant relatives chimed in, validating her narrative without knowing a single truth. I didn't respond. I didn't take the bait. I didn't defend myself, not publicly anyway. I blocked her on everything: phone, social media, email, every portal she could use to twist my life into content. My mom called me within hours. "Blocking her will only make things worse," she whispered, like Alyssa was lurking in the vents. I took a deep breath. It's not my job to make things easier anymore. She didn't argue. She just sighed heavily, the sound of years of exhaustion. Meanwhile, Alyssa moved into my mom's house, just for a few days, so she could figure things out. I knew what that meant. I'd seen this movie before, and just like always, the few days stretched into unpacked trash bags in the guest room, skincare bottles spilling across the bathroom counter, and Starbucks cups breeding on the nightstand. She slept until noon, blared TikToks at full volume like she was the only person in the house, and called it creative energy. She told my mom she was in between opportunities and not built for mediocrity. When my mom asked what opportunity she was pursuing, Alyssa shrugged and walked away. 5 days in, my mom called sounding drained, her voice cracking. "She doesn't lift a finger. She ordered 3 DoorDash meals today. One was just bubble tea." She lowered her voice. "She said she's working on a pitch deck." "A pitch deck for what?" I asked. My mom sighed. She just walked out of the room. For the first time, I heard something new in my mother's tone, something close to regret. Dad called next. "You're being cold," he told me, punishing her for asking for help. I couldn't help the small bitter laugh that slipped out. Car repairs, emergency rent, credit card bailouts, thousands over the years. When did she ever pay any of it back? He hesitated. "That's different." "How?" Another silence. Then he hung up. But Alyssa wasn't done. The next blow came in the form of an email from my company's HR department. Someone had anonymously accused me of freelancing for a competitor using company resources. Attached were screenshots, real screenshots, but taken out of context from a logistics redesign project I'd done years ago. Screenshots I had shown Alyssa when she said she wanted to learn about UX design. She had saved them, for years, waiting for the day she could weaponize them. I spent the next 48 hours pulling timestamps, Slack messages, archived files, anything to prove the work was mine and not stolen. HR believed me eventually, but they gave me a warning. Be more cautious about who you share content with. I stared at the email for a long time. Alyssa hadn't just invaded my finances or my peace. She'd crossed into my career. She was no longer spiraling. She was retaliating. She started reaching out to people in my life. Her next target was my ex, the one who cheated on me with her ex-roommate. the one I hadn't spoken to in over a year. She told him I wasn't doing well, that I was isolating myself, that maybe he should check in, just in case. He sent me screenshots. Alyssa wasn't subtle. She wanted him to worry. She wanted him to contact me. She wanted to destabilize me emotionally. It backfired. He blocked her. I blocked her again on every new burner account she tried. It didn't end there. 2 of my friends also reached out, both having received strange DMs. Alyssa told one that I'd become paranoid. She told the other that she was scared for my safety because I'd cut off everyone who cared. She was planting seeds through people who didn't even know each other, constructing a narrative where she was the concerned sister and I was the one losing my grip. That was the moment something in me snapped in a calm, quiet way. I locked everything. Passwords, 2-factor authentication, old Google Drives, shared documents, anything she could manipulate. I deleted messages, removed past access, shut every door I had once carelessly left open. She used to be careless, now she was calculated. Meanwhile, my mom hit her limit. She gave Alyssa a quiet ultimatum: get a job or move out. For a moment, I almost believed this might be Alyssa's turning point, but she reacted exactly how Alyssa reacts to anything she can't control. She turned it into a performance. Mom's friend got her an interview at an accounting firm, a front desk assistant position, not glamorous, but stable. Alyssa pretended to work on a resume that looked thrown together in Canva. She dressed in heels and a blazer and left the house early, as if she were stepping into a new chapter. She returned 3 hours later with a shopping bag and a half-eaten pretzel. When Mom asked how it went, Alyssa rolled her eyes. I canceled. The energy felt off. Then she locked herself in the guest room and posted a selfie with the caption, "Protect your peace, even if they call it laziness." That night, my mom locked her wine cabinet and hid her purse. I wasn't surprised. The next day, Dad called to inform me, not ask, not discuss, that he was giving Alyssa a little help and that I'd made my point. He hung up before I could respond. I didn't care about the money. I cared about the fact that everyone kept throwing lifelines to the person who kept lighting the boat on fire. I could feel the next collapse coming. I could feel the emotional ground shifting. And I knew it was only a matter of time before something snapped. It didn't take long for Alyssa to escalate from chaos to destruction. When she realized my mother's patience was thinning and mine was long gone, she pivoted to a new tactic: control the narrative. If she couldn't get sympathy through our family, she'd harvest it elsewhere. The fake job interview incident was only the beginning. She had dressed like she was heading into an executive boardroom, strutted out the door with confidence she hadn't earned, and came home with nothing but shopping bags and a story about bad energy. That same night, after locking herself in the guest room, she filmed a moody, soft-lit selfie with the caption, "Protect your peace, even when they weaponize your ambition." The comments cooed with support. You deserve better. Never settle. People hate what they can't be. She drank it in. Mom quietly tightened her boundaries, locked up her wine cabinet, hid her purse, moved her jewelry box into her room. She didn't say it out loud, but I could hear the shift in her voice whenever she spoke. Love wasn't disappearing, it was retreating into self-defense. But Dad doubled down. The more Alyssa unraveled, the harder he tried to rescue her. "I'm giving Alyssa a little help," he told me one afternoon, voice stern like he was delivering news of national importance. "You've made your point, but I won't watch her fall apart." I thought about the credit cards I had paid off for her, the rent I covered, the countless bailouts he never knew I provided because I didn't want to make waves. I thought about the way Alyssa used to brag to her friends that Camilla always folds eventually. I thought about everything she had burned through, my time, my money, my trust. I thought, how much more do you expect me to give? When he hung up on me mid-sentence, that told me everything. Then the next hit landed. An email from HR, subject line, urgent. The kind of email that makes your stomach twist even before you open it. Someone had anonymously reported that I was freelancing for a competitor and using company systems to do it. Attached were screenshots, actual files from a project I completed the year before. Screenshots I had shown Alyssa when she begged me to teach her UX basics. She'd claimed she wanted to pivot into tech, and like an idiot, I believed her. She saved everything I sent her, not to learn, to use later. For 2 days, I barely slept, combing through archived project folders, Slack messages, timestamps, and emails to prove every pixel was mine. HR believed me, eventually. But they sent a warning about sharing internal work outside the company. The humiliation of having to explain my sister's sabotage was a wound I didn't expect to bleed so much. After I forwarded the HR chain to my mom, silence hung on the line. Finally, she whispered, "She did that?" Not defensive, not dismissive, just tired. Tired enough that I felt a crack in something old and rigid between us. But Alyssa didn't stop at my job. She reached out to people in my life, people who weren't prepared for her manipulation. My ex, the one who cheated on me with her old roommate, sent me a chain of texts and screenshots. Alyssa told him I wasn't doing well, that I was isolating dangerously, that he should check in for safety. She framed it like concern, but she crafted every sentence to cause doubt. She wasn't subtle. She wanted him to panic. She wanted him to reach out. She wanted the chaos to circle back to me. He blocked her. Then my friends started receiving strange DMs. One said Alyssa asked if they'd noticed my paranoia. Another said Alyssa was worried about my mental state. Alyssa wasn't spiraling. She was building a foundation, constructing a new reality where she was the concerned sister and I was the unhinged recluse. That's when a cold clarity settled in. She wasn't trying to reconcile. She wasn't trying to get help. She was trying to shatter me from the outside in. I started shutting every door she could slip through. I changed passwords, enabled two-factor authentication, closed old Google Drives, removed shared access from ancient files, scrubbed every platform she could use to twist my life again. She wasn't careless anymore. She was calculated. And I realized something terrifying. Alyssa had always thought of me as the safe one, the responsible one, the stable one, the one she could push and pull and use without consequence. But now that safety was gone. I wasn't her anchor anymore. I was her threat, and that made her dangerous. Meanwhile, Mom was unraveling in her own quiet way. The nightly calls started sounding more like confessions. She ordered DoorDash 3 times today, she whispered once. One was just bubble tea. Another night. She said she's in a healing chapter and refuses to clean her dishes because it blocks her energy flow. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This wasn't eccentricity. This was chaos wrapped in spirituality and weaponized irresponsibility. Finally, Mom snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just decisively. She packed Alyssa's belongings, makeup bags, cluttered skincare bottles, clothes, 2 ring lights, a stack of barely cracked self-help books, into 3 contractor bags. She placed them in the garage and called Alyssa into the kitchen. Her voice was steady. "You need to leave." Alyssa reacted the only way she knows how. She staged a performance. She cried. She screamed. She accused Mom of being abusive. She filmed herself mid-breakdown, voice trembling, saying she was being discarded like trash by the woman who raised her. Then she called our dad, her eternal parachute. He came. He didn't look at my mom, didn't ask what happened, didn't ask how she was. He just helped Alyssa load the bags into his car while she sniffled theatrically behind him, and they drove away without a word. That night, Alyssa posted a story from the passenger seat of Dad's car. The lighting was dim, her face half-shadowed. The caption read, "Sometimes all you have is yourself, and sometimes that's still too much for them." Then, nothing. For a week. Then 2. No calls. No texts. No posts. Not even one of her cryptic quotes about cutting off toxic energy. The quiet felt unnatural, like a rope pulling tight but not snapping yet. I kept telling myself to enjoy the peace, but a part of me knew better. Alyssa never disappears unless she's out of options, or planning something bigger. Alyssa didn't reappear in the way normal people do. No call, no apology, no explanation. Instead, someone in a group chat forwarded me a link one morning with the message, "Is this about your sister?" The link opened to a GoFundMe page titled, "Starting Over After Family Abuse." And there she was, Alyssa, hair messy, eyes red, standing in what looked like a gas station bathroom, snapped from a low angle like she'd been crying right before hitting record. The description read like a dramatic screenplay about her journey, discarded by her mother, betrayed by her only sibling, gaslit for years, fighting bravely to rebuild after being kicked out with nothing. It was a masterclass in emotional manipulation, and halfway through the paragraph, buried between lines about surviving emotional trauma and relying on God's strength, she mentioned me by name. Camilla refused to help. She watched me drown and walked away. My phone buzzed nonstop as strangers donated. Comments poured in. "Stay strong, girl." "Family can be so cruel. You deserve better." She replied to nearly everyone, thanking them for believing her, for supporting her, for seeing her truth. Not once did she mention the fraud alerts, the HR complaint, the secret DMs, the bank calls. She crafted her role as the misunderstood heroine perfectly. I didn't say anything publicly. I didn't report the fundraiser. I didn't call her. I didn't explain myself to strangers. I just watched, silently, as Alyssa built a fantasy world where she was the wounded survivor and I was the villain. It hurt in a deep, unexpected way, not because people believed her, but because she needed me to be the monster for her story to make sense. Then she went quiet again. A week passed. No stories, no posts, no updates. The funds stopped coming in. For the first time in months, the digital noise around her went completely still. Then my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened to it. A woman's voice. Professional, crisp. "Hello, this is Andrea from the Transitional Housing Intake Program. Alyssa listed you as her emergency contact. She's applying for placement and needs someone to vouch for her reliability." Reliability. My sister, who had weaponized my kindness for years, wanted me to vouch for her reliability. I called back immediately. "No," I said calmly. "I won't be involved. I'm not part of her situation anymore." There was a brief pause on the other end, a pause that felt like understanding, not judgment. "Understood," the woman replied. "I'll mark it down." That should have made me feel guilty. Instead, it made me feel steady, like a boundary had finally taken root. But Alyssa wasn't done. A legal cease and desist letter had already been drafted by then, something my lawyer friend helped with, detailing the HR sabotage, the fraudulent use of my information, the defamatory DMs. I sent it through certified mail. Signature required. She signed for it. 3 hours later, every one of her social media accounts went dark, deleted, scrubbed, vanished. She didn't apologize. She didn't defend herself. She didn't lash out. She simply disappeared in a way that felt deliberate, strategized, calculated. My dad called that evening. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask what she'd done. Instead, his voice was trembling with anger. "Did you actually send Alyssa legal threats over misunderstandings? Do you want to see the screenshots?" I asked. He didn't answer that. He didn't want proof. Proof would force him to see Alyssa clearly, maybe for the first time. Instead, he snapped, "You're going too far. She's still your sister." "She's not acting like one," I said. He hung up without another word. Days passed. Quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like someone holding their breath, waiting for the next explosion. I stopped checking my phone obsessively. I slept through the night. I moved through my days without looking over my shoulder. It felt like a temporary truce, an eerie calm before the final break. Then Morgan called. Morgan, my cousin, the peacemaker, the mediator, the one person who always tries to hold the family together even when it hurts her. She was crying. She told me Alyssa had called her, begging for a place to stay, told her she'd lost her housing situation, that Dad wasn't supporting her anymore, that she just needed a week. Morgan, who would have bent over backward for her 6 months ago, said no. "I can't do it anymore," she whispered. "I finally believe you. I finally see it." That moment, hearing someone else see Alyssa clearly, felt like a pressure valve releasing inside me. Alyssa had finally burned the last bridge she thought would always be there. And then came the final unraveling. Morgan texted me a screenshot of a wedding invitation from months back, the one she'd sent me long before the chaos. I'd never RSVP'd, not out of spite. I just didn't have the emotional capacity to sit in a room full of people pretending we were a normal family. But 3 days before the wedding, Morgan sent me another message. "Can't wait to see you this weekend. So glad you and Alyssa talked things out." Talked things out? I hadn't talked to Alyssa in nearly a month. At that exact moment, another text buzzed in. From Liv, our other cousin, a screen recording. Alyssa had posted a fake iMessage conversation, fabricated texts where I supposedly apologized, said I missed her, said I wanted to make peace at the wedding. She responded in the fake thread saying she forgave me. She even mimicked my texting style, my old contact name, my punctuation habits, the emojis I use. People believed it. Morgan believed it. Everyone believed it. That was her plan. Create a fictional reunion and hope I'd show up to keep the lie alive. I didn't. I called Morgan and explained everything. She sounded shaken, embarrassed. I don't get it, she whispered. Why would she do that? Because she needs to win, even if she has to fake the scoreboard. I told her I wouldn't be coming to the wedding. She understood, and Alyssa went anyway. Of course she did. She arrived late, wearing full-length white, rhinestone-studded, slit to the hip, like she wanted the bride's spotlight. She hugged people she hadn't spoken to in years, grabbed Morgan for a photo, and posted it with the caption, "When forgiveness leads, families heal. Proud to stand by you today." Morgan texted me after the ceremony. She told everyone you didn't want to ruin your progress. She was creating her own reality. And she was selling it like gospel. 2 days later, the messages started again. This time from someone I hadn't spoken to since my first job out of college. They forwarded an email from Alyssa. She claimed she was gathering testimonials for a legal matter involving Camilla and asked if they had any memories of me being emotionally unstable in the workplace. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't an exaggeration. It was an attempt to destroy my reputation on paper. That was when I contacted a lawyer and sent the cease and desist. After she received it, she vanished from the internet. It felt like the rope finally snapped. The silence should have felt like peace, but it didn't. It felt like standing in the center of a burned-out field. No flames, no smoke, just the eerie quiet that comes after destruction. My mother and I spoke more often now, though our conversations tiptoed around the crater Alyssa had left behind. Dad barely contacted me at all except for curt updates. Alyssa's figuring things out. Alyssa just needs time. Always in defense of her, never mind the damage she caused. Then, one evening, a message popped up from Dad with a subject line that felt like a trap. Family dinner. Let's talk. No explanation, no context, just an expectation. I almost deleted it, but my mother called an hour later. She sounded resigned. I'm going, only because he'll say I'm the one keeping us divided if I don't. She paused. I won't ask you to fix anything, Camila, but I think you should be there. I agreed. Not because I believed I owed Alyssa anything, not because I thought the dinner would bring healing, but because I wanted to hear her say whatever she planned to say without filters, without rehearsed lines, without the glow of a social media audience. Sunday evening, we walked into my dad's house together. Everything was staged, candles lit, wine glasses already filled, the table set like he was hoping to summon a Norman Rockwell painting instead of two daughters who could barely be in the same room without the air cracking. Alyssa sat at the table, and she looked different. Not humble, not remorseful, just small, deflated, tired in a way I'd never seen before, the kind of tired that comes from running out of lies to tell yourself. Her clothes were slightly rumpled, hair tied back with a cheap elastic, bare face, no filters, no contouring, no glow. No performance left. We sat and ate in almost complete silence. Dad did most of the talking, work stories, neighbor stories, football scores. Mom barely picked at her food, her eyes fixed somewhere in the middle of the table as if she couldn't believe she was reliving this scene again. Alyssa didn't look at me. Not once. Then Dad put his fork down and cleared his throat. I could tell the speech was coming, the one he'd practiced in the mirror. This family needs healing, he began. We need to move past grudges, past misunderstandings. We have to move forward. He glanced at me, then at Alyssa, as if we were equally responsible for the wildfire she started. We're all hurting, he continued, but forgiveness is the only way things get better. Alyssa inhaled softly, preparing for her moment on stage, except this time there was no stage left. I know I went too far, she began. Her voice was softer than I expected. I was hurt. I lashed out. I wasn't thinking clearly. I'm sorry. The words were right, but the tone was wrong. They didn't land. They didn't feel rooted in truth. They felt like lines she'd memorized. A rehearsed apology from someone who knew they had to say it but didn't understand what any of it meant. I've lost a lot, she continued, glancing briefly at Dad. I'm asking for compassion, not from him. She nodded softly toward my mother. But from you. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said calmly, you don't want compassion. You want access. The air in the room froze. My dad tried to jump in, but I raised a hand to silence him. Alyssa, I said evenly, I'm not going to support you anymore. No money, no housing, no job references, nothing. If you want to rebuild, you'll have to do it without dragging me down again. My mother let out a shaky breath, a sound halfway between relief and grief. Alyssa's face didn't crumble. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just nodded once, like she'd braced for this. We ended the night pretending the conversation had been productive. Dad hugged me with stiff arms. Mom lingered, squeezing my hand like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Alyssa didn't speak when I left the house. I thought that would be the end. But endings in my family rarely stay that way. 4 months passed. 4 months of silence, which in Alyssa's world is never truly silence. It's incubation. Then a new email from Dad appeared in my inbox. Sunday dinner. Everyone's invited. No mention of Alyssa. No context. No warning. My mother texted separately. He says she's turning things around. Please just show up. You don't have to say anything. So I went. The house was quieter this time, heavy with anticipation. Alyssa was already seated at the table when I arrived. She looked ordinary. Not glamorous. Not tragic. Just there. Her hair was flat. Her nails unpainted. She wore a turtleneck inappropriate for the warm weather, as if trying to disappear behind fabric. She nodded at me, barely a greeting, barely a presence. Dinner began. Dad talked, again filling silence with meaningless updates. Mom said nothing. Alyssa stared at her plate. Then Dad finally steered the conversation toward the real reason we were there. She's trying, he said carefully. Part-time job. Staying clean. Looking into certification programs. It hasn't been easy. He glanced at me. You know that. I didn't respond. Then Alyssa spoke. I'm not asking for much, she said quietly. I just need a little help to stay on track. I looked at her. I looked at my mother, then my father. I waited. My job doesn't pay enough for me to get approved for a place, Alyssa continued. I just need someone to co-sign a lease for a studio. Not money, just a signature. I didn't answer, but Mom did. She already gave more than anyone, my mother said, her voice stronger than I'd heard in months. You can't keep asking her to pay for the healing. Alyssa flinched, not dramatically, but enough to break the illusion. My dad leaned back, frustrated. So we're just going to let her fail again? Mom didn't miss a beat. Maybe failing is the only way she learns. The room sank into silence. After dinner, as I reached for my coat, Alyssa followed me to the door. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She didn't fake anything. She just said, this time, I really am trying. I held her gaze for a moment, then answered with the truth. Then try without me. She nodded, once, as if she knew it was coming long before I said it. As I stepped outside, my father called after me. She's still your sister. I didn't turn around. I just said, that's not always a good thing. And that was it. No explosion, no dramatic collapse, no sudden transformation. Just a broken pattern that finally stopped repeating because I stopped participating. A family still pretending things weren't fractured beyond repair. A sister who ran out of people to blame. I haven't heard from Alyssa since that night. But for the first time in my life, I'm not watching the door anymore.